Welcome back to the Sovereign Ratio. In the previous video, we took a look at a potential Bitcoin correction based off of a couple of things. One of those being the Pi Cycle long moving average indicator, and also USDT dominance, which was heading toward a 4-year long support. Right now, it looks like Bitcoin is starting to play out a correction and the final dip prior to the halving. But the real question is this going to be an actual dip, 30% or more, or is this just going to be another bear trap before we take off into new highs? Let's take a look at it today. We're going to explore a lot of different things and go over a lot of different metrics, indicators, and social risk indicators. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, and leave me a comment below. Alright, so first, just a quick recap of the previous video. We had this 4-year long trend line established on USDT dominance. I had seen a couple different people looking at this and it caught my attention as well. And for the meantime, you can see it has bounced inside of that box that I had drawn here between 4% and 3.75%. It went down there, almost touched the bottom of the box, bounced around for a couple daily candles, and then has now started to move back up. And in my opinion, the first place of resistance for this would be right here around 5.6%, where you can see there's some previous support and resistance levels and SR flips in the past. There's also one here at 6.48%, but I'm not sure that the market has enough time to get somewhere like that unless it made a very, very, very aggressive move very quickly, because we are getting very close to the halving. It's less than a month away at this point. In the last video, we also looked at the Pi Cycle indicator, specifically the high long moving average for Bitcoin and a potential rejection from that level, just simply because in the past, what we once considered to be the golden 618 rejection, I've actually gone back and now I see what we're actually rejecting off of each and every time is the Pi Cycle long moving average. In this cycle and previous cycles, it appears that's what Bitcoin is doing. Now, the depth of this correction is hard to determine simply because there is a lot of bullishness with the ETF and things like that. But if we just look at the past, as an example, back here, whenever the rejection happened off of the Pi Cycle, I'm only going to take this from the Pi Cycle indicator. I'm not going to take it from the top of the wick, but from the Pi Cycle indicator, there was a drop of around 45%. And then back here in 2016, from the Pi Cycle indicator, the drop was roughly 36%. The entire move was around 40%, but you get the idea, somewhere between 30 and 40%. Now for me, I'm going to look at some key levels here on price action that have been high volume areas, and we're going to use percentage basis for that. So from the Pi Cycle indicator again, down here at this level, that's a 37% drop down here to 44K. And that kind of is my worst case scenario right now. I just don't see Bitcoin going below $44,000. The second area of interest is here at $52,000, where there's a little bit of volume. And also back here, it's a resistance level on the way down. And then also just the big even number of 60,000 is an area of interest, and that is essentially a 14% drop, which for me before the halving, I would like to see something over 20%, down here to 52K would be great, and 44K would be even better. I think that's both healthy levels for Bitcoin to move down to in the short term before the halving, before any bearish scenario that I have is completely gone and we're just going to the moon every day. Going to a shorter term time frame here, the daily chart, we can see that so far the correction has played out from 73.7, and we are currently sitting at 66.3 with a bottom on this movement so far around 65.6, which is just around an 11% drop. For me, again, I don't think that's severe enough of a correction, but this could also be just another bear trap, because the strength in the market right now, it's very feasible that Bitcoin could come down and maybe do like a 62 to 63K. If we go to the 4-hour chart, you can see that Bitcoin has kind of done an interesting move here. Bitcoin usually likes to move down in threes, right? So we've got one move down here and then back up, and then a second move down here and back up, and then a third move down, which would probably put Bitcoin somewhere around this level here, because there is an area of volume right around here, and that sits around 63K or so. So for major bullish continuation, I would want to see Bitcoin hold 63K. If Bitcoin goes under 63K, then my next targets again would be 60, 52, which is much further down here. Yeah, this 52 area, there's a lot of volume, and then also again 44, 45K, worst case scenario. Well, I'm thinking about it, I should probably provide an update on total 3 minus USDT divided by Bitcoin. This is the chart that, as I mentioned in previous videos, that I've been looking at for altcoin entries, not necessarily the best price, but more the best time. Generally, when this chart gets down to the 0.25 to 0.3 area is the best time to buy altcoins, right around the halving, before the halving, or just after. And it has not got down there yet. You can see that this weekly candle actually shot up to 0.48 with the bullishness that's been in the market the last couple of weeks, and a lot of altcoins taking off majorly, like Solana and some gaming projects like Illuvium and others that I'm interested in. But with this Bitcoin rejection, you can see that the topping tail is starting to form on this weekly candle, and we're looking for probably lower prices and lower values on this particular chart. Now, again, we've got a long way to go to get down here to the 0.25 to 0.3 area. Whether it gets there or not, I don't know, but generally that is the best place. When also you look at Bitcoin dominance, we'll flip to that really quick. When that does that and Bitcoin dominance reaches a peak, which in this case we're hoping for around the 58% area, that's generally where altcoins will start to rip. Bitcoin dominance is currently doing a good job of holding the support line that it's been in for quite a while, and the weekly candle has been vacillating between green and red. There's a lot of indecision right now on what Bitcoin dominance wants to do, but ultimately I think the target that we're looking for is that 58% level whenever Bitcoin makes its first big move up within the optimism phase, before altcoins actually take over and start to run much harder. Next thing I want to take a look at here is the psychology of a market cycle chart to try to figure out where we are right now. Now, there's a couple cases to be made here. If we look down on the bottom of the chart, you can see that the depression phase after the anger phase usually is somewhat of a parabola. In this case, we didn't really have that. We had some choppiness here because I'm considering this to be anger. I'm not considering the FTX dump to be anger. I'm considering all of this to be anger. And then we had a couple of peaks here, right? Like depression peaks, whereas depression usually looks like a little bit of more of an upwards curved movement. This is more of like a long drawn out depression period. And then right after the depression period, you can see that there is a move down, which was probably in this area right here, which would correlate right here, and then a move up into disbelief. And then it's an argument that could be made here that we're still in disbelief. I'm not really sure, because this movement right here is not convincingly big enough to be a disbelief period, but it could be. And we could actually be in disbelief 2 or hope right now. I made a video on this a couple of months ago, and I thought that we were in the disbelief phase, getting ready to head into the dump before the hope phase. But there's an argument to be made that we are actually in the hope phase now, getting ready to have a dump before optimism and the rally actually starts to get real. You can see that this is an extremely aggressive part of the cycle, and I think we're all expecting that on both Bitcoin and altcoins again, potentially even being the biggest bull market that we've ever had for some of these altcoins. With the hype and interest in proof of work, gaming, AI, and metaverse coins right now. Also, meme coins have been doing insane things lately, so that might be another big narrative this cycle, just because people enjoy dogs with hats on and cock in you, all these other fun meme coins. Something else to take into consideration is the crypto fear and greed index, currently sitting at 81. Recently, I saw it, I think, as high as 88. We'll put on a year chart here and look. Yeah, it was all the way up to 75, 83. Yeah, 88 was the top value that I saw recently for that. Actually, back in March at one point, it got up to 90. But we're going to zoom out and go to the max distance on this so we can take a look at things. Typically, whenever Bitcoin fear and greed is this high, it also marks periods where we start to cool off a bit. Now, it can stay high and elevated for quite a while, but if we go back here to like November 2020, you can see that fear and greed was very high. And then also in February of 2021, it was very high. And then back in October of 2021, whenever the bull market actually topped out, it was in the area of 75. So it's just interesting that sometimes whenever the price is higher, that the fear and greed is actually a little bit lower. But the first dump of the last bull market started right here around April 2021, and crypto fear and greed was sitting around 76. And then whenever the second one happened, it was sitting around 75 or so. And right now we're sitting at 84. So this could be a cool off period. December of 2020, this was far after the halving and after the flu dump, and when the bull market really started to take off, crypto fear and greed got up to 95. But this was actually not the peak of the market down here. So you can kind of consider this like a relative strength index in a way, looking for a divergence, because this was the first major correction in the optimism phase. And then these were the final two parts of the bull run where fear and greed did not get as high. So we can look at that right here. That's actually the first one when the fear and greed was around 95. And then this point here and this point here only had a fear and greed of around 80 to 75 subsequently. Another thing to look at here is open interest in the market. You can see it's currently sitting at $18.66 billion after recently getting up to just under $21 billion in this recent drop that we've had, wiped out a lot of leverage, but there is still an absolute ton of leverage in the market. I mean, that is, you can see on the big scale, that is really not much of a drop in open interest. And actually the last time that we were over this, it was in the top of the last bull market is when open interest was this high. It's pretty insane to see, and I do think we need some more of that leverage to be wiped out of the market before we can continue onwards and upwards. The good news is that some of the annualized funding has reset a little bit. In the last couple of weeks, we would see Bitcoin funding or Solana funding rates at 100% annually, meaning that you were paying just an incredible amount of funding to have a long position open. That has since reset, and a lot of these values have dropped, though some are still high, especially on the exchange CoinEx. I've noticed the funding rates have been extremely high. It's also a smaller exchange that I don't think a lot of people trade on, so that might be part of the reason as far as why the funding rates are so high on that exchange. As you can see, like even Bitcoin, it's 55% on CoinEx. Vertex I've never even heard of, and it's 48%, but then ones that I have heard of like Binance and BitGet, they're at 20% and 12% respectively. But the moral of the story is the funding rates have dropped quite a bit. In the orange here, that's whenever funding rates are really high. You can see we're back in this like teal area, which is kind of in the middle, and funding rates are not terrible. Why they could be a little bit better, they're not terrible right now, and I think that has reset a little bit. So while we love Bitcoin, and it is our long-term asset, at least on this channel, it's also worth noting, though, that we're really looking for the gains of the altcoins. And I want to give a percentage basis on what could potentially happen based off of various percentages that Bitcoin could correct. Generally, there is a ratio, and I'm going to show you how I figured that for myself. I'm just going to go back to the last pre-halving dump using Litecoin. And from here to here, we're going to exclude the COVID dump. Litecoin fell 75% in the time that Bitcoin fell about 45%. So if we take that 45% on Bitcoin, multiply that by the golden ratio, you get almost 75%. So generally, whatever Bitcoin corrects, if you think Bitcoin's going to correct 10%, then I would say that altcoins would probably correct 16, 20%. If Bitcoin's going to correct 20%, then altcoins are going to correct, 35%. So generally, whatever you are planning for Bitcoin, or whatever you anticipate the drop for Bitcoin to be, multiply it by the golden ratio, 1.618, and that'll give you an idea of how much that particular altcoin could drop if there was such a move. If you decide not to do that and you prefer using Fibonacci levels, I'm going to show you how I'm doing Fibonacci levels right now, knowing that I'm never going to get the bottom. But as I DCA again during this correction and start buying more, I want to figure out levels to do it, right? Well, I can either take down here all the way at the bottom of this movement, or I can take the most recent movement, which is what I'm going to do, and run a Fibonacci here to here and look for key levels. We're going to look for the 382. You can see Caspa actually just went below the 382. You got the 0.5 here at 11.5 cents, and then the golden pocket sits right around 0.09. So I think 10 cents is a great area to pick up this asset, just for example on Caspa, and you could do this with any of the other altcoins. If you wanted to, you could also take it all the way back down here and then look at Fibonacci levels. So now we're looking at Caspa actually coming down to the 382 right now, and then the 0.5 sitting at 10 cents, and then the golden pocket sitting around 8 cents. So you can do those Fibonacci's for yourself if you're looking to get entries. Now, it's also feasible that if Bitcoin does have a 30% correction, that altcoins could correct 50%. And if we do that from the top, just do a quick even, 50% is right there at just above 9 cents on Caspa. 60% is down here at the golden pocket, essentially at 8 cents. And you can just figure it out from there based off of percentages and Fibonacci's where you want to set your limit orders. But I would highly recommend that you set those limit orders, because the likelihood that you're going to be able to just market into these things whenever the price gets there is very low. It's going to get bought up. Here's a chart that's a little bit easier to do that with, which is my favorite altcoin in the entire crypto space. That's Chainlink. We can run the exact same Fibonacci from all the way at the bottom here to the recent top. And the levels are a little bit more defined, right? You've got the 382 sitting here around 1637, so we'll call that $17 buy-in. You've got 1435 sitting here, so we'll call that a $15 buy-in. And then you've got probably the best level with the most volume down here just above $12. We'll call that a $13 buy-in. So for me, I actually have limit orders set at $17, $15, and $13 for Chainlink. And if it doesn't hit those before the move starts, I'll just mark it in with the rest of whatever's left. If for whatever reason it goes below that, I will probably just sell my 2023 Z01 Camaro and buy Chainlink. In case you haven't seen my altcoin videos that I've done in the past, I want to give you a little bit of a hint here on Crypto Bubbles. This is a site that I go to frequently to look at things in a different way. I like how the big bubbles stand out for the coins that have moved the most, either direction. If it's really red, then it's obviously lost a lot. If it's really green, then it's either gained a lot. But I like to go to the yearly, and I do it on an exchange where there's a lot of different coins available, like MEXC here. And the reason that I do that is I look in here for coins that have had big gains prior to the halving that have not seen a bull run, because generally the newer coins that have not seen a bull run in the past are the ones that rocket up the most in this bull run. Now, an exception to that would be Stacks. Stacks is one I will give you right off the bat that has seen a bull run in the past, but the narrative has shifted. Now, because Bitcoin has an ETF and needs a scaling solution, Stacks is there to do that for Bitcoin, and that is a coin that I think is going to do absolute wonders in this bull market, even though it has seen others. And obviously Chainlink, I think, is going to do that as well. But looking here, one that sticks out right away is Tau. It's BitTensor. It's an AI. It's a kind of an AI solution type of play, and it has a lot of hype behind it right now. A lot of people love this coin, and it's recently shot up from $200 all the way up to almost $800, and it's had a 654% gain year to date. So that is a great selection. Another couple that I see on here are Nakamoto Games. That has not seen a bull run, I don't think, but it did just an amazing gain from like 9 cents to $2.50 in this pre-halving, in this part of the pre-halving cycle. Another one down here is Ethereum. Ethereum is actually a proof of work layer 1, and it has recently rocketed up as well. There's been a lot of influencers talking about it, and I think that's part of the reason why it's done that. But Ethereum still has a relatively low market cap. I think it's like ranked 250 out of all cryptos. So that's another one that has not seen a bull run that's probably worth at least looking into at a bare minimum. Injective Protocol, that is another one that has seen a bull run, but the narrative behind Injective right now is crazy, and I think this is going to be one of the best performers of this cycle. I could see Injective Protocol anywhere between $300 and $500 easy at the top of this cycle. Another one on here is Kaspa, which we just looked at a few minutes ago. Kaspa for me is the ADA of this cycle. I could be totally wrong about that. Now, they don't operate the same. Kaspa is a proof of work token, and ADA is not a proof of work token, but in their price range, Kaspa is sitting, 12 cents right now. When I see Kaspa, I think of it hitting $3 like ADA did last cycle, especially with the belief in it and the narrative behind it right now. For me, I could be totally wrong, but I think we're going to see a $3 Kaspa at the top of this cycle. That's another one to definitely at least look at, in my opinion. This is financial advice, of course. And then also just any AI token. I think AI is one of those categories where you could put a blindfold on and throw darts and you're going to hit every single time. Guys, while I'm thinking about it, go ahead and make sure and follow me on Twitter. I do post a lot of updates there. If I see something that I don't want to make a whole video about, I'll pop off and say something on Twitter. So please do follow me on there. Also, the channel is starting to grow to 800 subscribers, 900 subscribers. Let's start getting some motivation behind that. Please do share the channel with anybody you can. I do try to give unbiased, good information on here, both directions. But before we part ways, I just pulled up the Bitcoin chart one more time and ran a Fibonacci retracement on it to kind of look at some key levels. We've got the 236 sitting here at 60K, which I mentioned 60K, the big even number, is an area of interest for me. The 382 is sitting at 51.6, which I mentioned 52K is an area of interest for me as well. And then the 0.5 is sitting at 44.7, which I said 44 to 45K is an area of interest for me. Now, I do want to make note that the golden pocket is sitting down here between 37 and 36-ish. Again, I don't really think that's going to happen, but just food for thought, that is where the golden pocket sits right now. I don't really put a lot of stock into price going that low, but just for your information, it is sitting there. So let's see what happens with this. Let's see if Bitcoin does a 10, 20, 30, 40% correction. Let's see if it looks like the 2015-16 cycle, which currently this entire cycle resembles very closely. And if it does exactly what happened then, it would have a 40% retracement. But with the bullishness in the market right now, I could see more like a 25 to 35% retracement being feasible. Anything over 30 would be satisfactory for me to go, okay, I'm totally done with any bearish thoughts right now. Even if the price goes down more, I know what's going to happen after the halving. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, the like button, leave me a comment below. Let me know if you'd like any particular altcoins analyzed in the upcoming days, or just give me general thoughts on what you think about the market right now. We'll see you in the next video, and safe trading.